The bell rang sharply, signaling the start of first period at Greenville High School. The sound sliced through the morning haze as students shuffled to their desks, the remnants of sleep still evident in their drooping eyelids and languid movements. Among them was 15-year-old Mia Carter, a quiet, thoughtful girl with a love for books and a knack for fading into the background. She took her usual seat in the middle of the room, her dark braids falling over her shoulders, her eyes fixed on the notebook in front of her. Mia didn't like being the center of attention. At Greenville, where she was one of the few black students in a predominantly white school, attention often came with unwelcome stares, awkward comments, or worse. She had learned to keep her head down, her voice soft, and her presence unassuming. But all of that was about to change. The first period was history, taught by Mr. Randall, a man whose booming voice and sharp wit often left the room in uneasy silence. Mr. Randall prided himself on being realistic with his students, though many found his bluntness to border on cruel. He had a way of singling out students, pushing them into corners with questions that felt more like traps. Some saw it as a challenge, others dreaded it. "All right, class," Mr. Randall said, clapping his hands together as he strode to the front of the room. "Let's see who's been paying attention to our Civil War unit." His eyes roamed the room, a predator scanning for prey. The students tensed, their gazes darting away, hoping not to be chosen. Mia felt his gaze land on her. Her stomach tightened. She lowered her head, pretending to be deeply engrossed in her notebook, but it was no use. "Mia Carter," Mr. Randall called, his voice dragging out her name with a mocking lilt. "You're up. Why do you think the South fought so hard to preserve slavery?" The room fell silent. The hum of casual whispers and the shuffling of papers ceased as all eyes turned to Mia. Her heart raced as the weight of the moment settled on her. She was used to the stares, but this was different. This wasn't just a question. It was an accusation, a challenge, and it carried an edge that sliced deeper than words should. Mia swallowed hard, her voice steady but soft as she answered. "I think it was about preserving their way of life." Mr. Randall's eyebrows shot up, his mouth curling into a smirk. He stepped forward, pacing theatrically. "Preserving their way of life?" he repeated, his tone dripping with disdain. "And what exactly does that mean, Mia? You're black. Surely, you should understand this better than anyone." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Some students glanced at Mia, their faces a mix of disbelief and discomfort. Others stared at their desks, too afraid or too unsure to react. The words hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving, cutting into Mia's composure. She felt the heat rise to her cheeks, a mix of humiliation and fury bubbling within her. She wanted to disappear, to shrink into her seat and let the moment pass. But something deep inside her refused to be silenced. A spark of defiance ignited, fed by years of enduring subtle jabs, microaggressions, and the ever-present burden of being different. Mia sat up straighter, her hands gripping the edges of her desk. Her voice, though trembling at first, grew stronger with each word. "Maybe it's uncomfortable," she said, her eyes locking onto Mr. Randall's, "because you're asking me to explain a system that was built to oppress people like me. Maybe it's uncomfortable because you're more interested in mocking me than actually teaching us." The room grew deathly quiet. Mr. Randall froze, his smirk faltering as the weight of Mia's words sank in. The students were stunned, their gazes darting between Mia and the teacher, unsure of what would happen next. Mia wasn't finished. Her voice carried a newfound strength, unwavering as she continued. "You think that because I'm black, I should have all the answers about slavery. But maybe you should ask yourself why you think it's okay to single me out because of my skin color." Mr. Randall's face flushed, his lips parting as if to respond, but no words came. For the first time, he seemed at a loss, his authority shaken by the clarity and courage of a 15-year-old girl. "Let's move on," he muttered finally, turning back to the board. His voice was tight, his usual commanding presence reduced to a shadow of itself. But the class wasn't moving on, not in their minds. Mia's words lingered, reshaping the room's energy. Some students sat in quiet admiration, others in awkward disbelief. As the lesson dragged on, Mia leaned back in her chair, her hands trembling but her heart swelling with pride. For once, she had spoken her truth, refusing to let herself be diminished. The bell rang, and the students filed out, their whispers buzzing with the weight of what had just happened. By lunchtime, the story had spread across the school. Mia walked into the cafeteria, feeling the stares of dozens of eyes on her. She kept her head high, her expression calm, even as her heart raced. Her friends, Lily and Simone, waved her over to their usual table. They leaned in as she sat down, their voices a mix of excitement and awe. "Mia," Simone whispered, her eyes wide. "Did you really say that to Mr. Randall?" "You're a legend," Lily added, grinning. "He deserved it. He's been pulling that crap for years." Mia gave a small smile. "I just couldn't sit there and let him talk to me like that." "And you shouldn't have," Simone said firmly. "You did what all of us have been too scared to do." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Students she barely knew approached her in the hallways, some offering quiet words of support, others simply giving her a nod of respect. But not everyone was on her side. As she gathered her things from her locker, Mia overheard a group of students talking nearby. "She just wants attention," one of them said, his voice loud enough for her to hear. "Always playing the race card." Mia froze, her grip tightening on her locker door. The words stung, but she took a deep breath, reminding herself of why she had spoken up in the first place. Not everyone would understand, and that was okay. She wasn't doing this for them. That evening, Mia told her mother everything. As she recounted the confrontation, the tension, and the aftermath, her mother listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to pride. "You did the right thing," her mother said, placing a hand on Mia's shoulder. "Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but it's necessary. And if there are consequences, we'll face them together." The next day, Mia was called into the principal's office. She entered the room to find Mr. Randall already there, his arms crossed, his face a mix of annoyance and unease. Principal Howard, a tall woman with a calm yet authoritative demeanor, gestured for Mia to sit. "I've been made aware of what happened in your history class," Principal Howard said, her voice measured. "I'd like to hear your side of the story." Mia took a deep breath and recounted everything, her voice steady despite the knots in her stomach. When she finished, Principal Howard turned to Mr. Randall, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Randall," she said, "this is not the first time I've received complaints about your teaching methods. This behavior is unacceptable." Mr. Randall shifted uncomfortably, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. "I was trying to engage the class," he said weakly. "If Mia felt singled out, that wasn't my intention." "It's not about how I felt," Mia interjected, her voice firm. "It's about what you said and how it made me feel. You embarrassed me in front of the entire class." Principal Howard nodded. "Thank you for speaking up, Mia. Your courage is commendable." As Mia left the office, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The confrontation had been difficult, but it had sparked something larger, a conversation, a movement, and a shift in the way her school approached issues of race and respect. In the weeks that followed, Mia became an unexpected leader, her voice inspiring others to share their own stories and demand change. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but Mia knew one thing for sure. Her voice mattered, and she would never let it be silenced again.